It was a great pleasure for the emperor to learn from the account which they gave of their journey that from Rome to London his name was venerated among the people through whom they had passed. He secretly enjoyed having left impressions strong enough to merit the affection and the regrets of these same people, although they had had to suffer much during the unhappy times of 1813 and 1814. The supremacy of France was still dear to them, and they prayed that he whose memory they held in such affection might be restored to liberty. The Holy Father also, forgetting his past ills, showed that he felt the hard treatment to which one of his sons was being subjected. Such were the feelings of the people, from the banks of the Tiber to those of the Rhine. And you, Frenchmen, what were yours? The travelers had not set foot on the soil of France. The emperor sent for all the trunks which had been entrusted to the newcomers either at Rome or at London. As soon as they were open, he inspected all that they contained piece by piece. The principal articles were, first, an oil painting representing the King of Rome in the costume of a prince, a court costume of white satin. He was descending a broad double staircase and had reached a landing. The staircase was in a park. This picture, which was in a gilt frame, was about 1.5 feet high by 1 foot broad. It was hung between the two pictures in the salon over the marble bust of the prince, which is spoken of in Dr. O'Meara's book. Second, a green Morocco case, which held 2 miniatures joined together. They were about 5 inches high by 4 wide. It was the King of Rome, and the other, I think, of King Jerome's son. This case remained for a long time in the emperor's bureau, and he used often to open it, look at his son's face. Third, a small medallion portrait of Madame Mère surrounded by little pearls. It was fastened over the study mantelpiece. There were also some toilet articles sent by Princess Pauline, and some things which were to amuse himself sent by Lady Holland. There were 2 boxes filled with books and newspapers which had been sent from London. The emperor examined the books one after another, as was his custom. There was a good quantity of them, but half were only old books which the priests had bought. The emperor examined the vases and ornaments which Cardinal Fesch had given the priests for their ministry. The chasubles were magnificent, the albs very handsome, the chalice and the paten were of silver gilt, as was the boat and the oil stock. The ciborium was of silver. There was a little silver crucifix on an ebony cross. The doctor's trunk was also open. The emperor found some orange flower water among a great many bottles, something which pleased him very much, as he used it frequently. As the rest were only drugs, he did not want them. Abbe Buonavita was a man of some 60 years of age, already very much bent, and one could not understand how he resolved to undertake so long a journey, and how and why the imperial family had chosen a man who was so far from strong. But whether from real attachment to the emperor or some other motive, the abbe had determined to start. Abbe Vignali might have been 30 years old. He had studied medicine for some time. He was a little man, dark and thick-set. It had been considered wise to send him to take the place of the Abbe Buonavita, who might break down, and to help the doctor if it should be necessary. Mr. Antomarchi was the physician. He was from 30 to 32 years of age. He had practiced his profession at Florence and was a pupil of a famous anatomist called Massigny, who had, it was said, designated him as a successor. The man named Courceau had been valet of Grand Marshal Duroc. He was with the Duke and cared for him when he was mortally wounded in 1813. In 1815, he had gone into the service of Madame Mère and had gone with her to Rome. Chandelier, employed in the Emperor's service de bouche in 1813, had since passed into the service of Princess Pauline. As soon as these men had learned that they were designated to go to St. Helena, they had made their preparations with joy, feeling happy that they were to go share the exile of him who had been been, and who still was the admiration of all Europe. The emperor appeared satisfied with their devotion. 2 or 3 times the priests had the honor of being admitted to his table at breakfast. As soon as the 2 priests and the doctor were settled in their quarters, Chinamen were given to them to serve them. At last, the emperor had a doctor of his own. He had been deprived of one since the departure of Doctors O'Meara and Stokoe. It is true that he could command the services of Dr. Verling, of whom I have written, but the emperor had never admitted him to his private apartments. It was enough that the doctor had been stationed at Longwood by the governor for the emperor to refuse to receive him or to see him. Yet Dr. Verling was a serious man who seemed very capable. The care which he had taken of the Grand Marshal's family and some other people at Longwood, among them Marchand, whom he had cured of a very serious illness, had gained for him the confidence of all of us. And I have no doubt that if the emperor had found himself seriously ill, he would not have hesitated to call in the doctor, whom he knew perfectly well, having seen him on board the Northumberland. On the 2 Sundays which followed the arrival of the priest, the emperor heard mass in the salon where the altar had been set up, but he wanted it to be said in the dining room in the future, as this room suited him and the priest better. Consequently, he ordered that all expenses necessary to render the place fit for divine service should be paid, so that the dining room was converted into a chapel on Sundays and fete days for the hour of mass. The priest had indeed brought the sacred vessels, the sacred stone, their vestment and ornaments, but all the rest was lacking. First, the room was put in order. White paper was pasted on the ceiling, and Chinese paper, a red ground having golden flowers and a border, covered the walls. A large quantity of white satin was brought to hang the back and sides of the spot where the altar was to be placed, and green satin for the hangings, which were festooned like drapery. 2 rods of gilded wood placed end to end, and having hangings of green silk with fringe of yellow silk ornamented with bells, divided the room into 2 parts. A new carpet covered the floor. The handsome mahogany dessert table was transformed into an altar. The front was made of white satin, framed by a border of green velvet. At the lower corners were 2 crowned ends, and in the center there was the cross of gold lace. The altar was covered with 2 cloths of cambric with broad lace borders. A little tabernacle, the shape of an antique temple, ornamented with columns and surmounted by a cross, was made of cardboard by Pierron. 4 candlesticks with candles and vases of flowers composed the ornaments of the altar. As the emperor heard that the Grand Marshal had a picture, a life-size head of Christ, the Ecce Homo, he asked him for it and placed it above the tabernacle. The 2 pier tables in the salon were placed to right and left of the altar, and on each was a 5-branch candlestick of silver. A large rug of green velvet covered the steps of the altar. It was edged with a yellow silk cord and embroideries. On the front was a large N with the crown and 2 other crowns at the corners, all in gold lace.